know last week there were some people that did. If there's someone in here that can recap last week and what we went over. We're having challenges with the video, but I did post 2 webinars in your profile. And had you gone to your profiles and my emails, you would have seen the videos that are listed that would have covered everything that we had talked about. There are actually 4 videos listed in your profile. The first one is talking about the overview of federal contracting, which you covered the first week, and it's going to give you more details than we really even covered the first weeks. The second video here is about creating those reports, talking about the past, the present, and the future, which is part of your homework assignment. So if you go through those videos, you should be able to get an understanding of what I was asking for as part of your deliverables. What I was finding, I was getting called and people already trying to get that prize and putting a lot more pressure on themselves than necessary. I don't want this to be pressure. I want you all to get it, and however long it takes for you to get it, I'm comfortable with that. Y'all okay with that? I don't want y'all to have that added pressure. So what we did last week, we covered past, present, and future, talking about how the government, what the government's process was as it relates to their stages of source of salt notices. We did talk about RFQs. We talked about the future. Well, I'm going to go back over some of those, but what I really would prefer is that you all go and listen to those videos so I don't have to reiterate. Each of them are 2 hours long. Yeah. And you can stop and take it because it is a whole lot of information that I'm giving out to you. What I also want to, if you were not here last week and did not get assigned to a team, please see Ms. Frazier. In fact, we have broken everyone by industry and by NAICS codes. And there should be no more than 5 people per team. Thank you. There should be no more than 5 people per team. And the whole purpose of this exercise is to give you all as much practical experience as possible. I want you to play on this side, so when you go up in the rest of the world, you at least have the same language and understanding what they're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And you can collectively do this together. It's also going to give you the practical experience of collaboration. How do you manage people? To me, that's the hardest part of running a business. That's why I tried to negotiate with the Lord 3 years ago. That's all I'm asking, 3 more years. I'll get out here and do what you want me to. But you know, managing people is not my thing. I like doing this. But that's part of the business. So, collaborating, is people, not only employees, but partners. And making sure that everyone has the same mission. To me, red flag partnership is when people are automatically thinking short term and thinking about the crumbs. Now, to me, people that know me, that's in relationship with me, know that money is not my driving force. I walked away from money. I turned $7 million of contracts to another firm because money has never been my driving factor. So understand who you are partnering with and marrying, because once you start getting in these relationships, it truly is a marriage. And it can be a good marriage or a bad marriage. That's why I am a true believer of that 90-day rule. I'm telling you, even now, as I'm starting this new business, 90 days, people, and I don't even have no money. That's what's funny. People already trying to attach themselves to what they think or perceive as success. Like, I have no money. But they have their hidden agendas. Because sometimes free is always good. If you don't have my same value system, I don't want to work with you. Because if you start out that way, guess what? You're going to end up that way. And it's never going to work. And for me, what I found, people who cannot say, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. That's a problem. Because everybody's wrong. There are certain character flaws. Amen? Can we say character flaws? Yes. That can't be corrected. So, I want you all to try to work. I'm not in a fantasy world. I don't expect everybody to all be happy and through this whole process. There's going to be some challenges, but the whole purpose is to be able to hold each other accountable. It's not fair to put all on one person when this is a team effort. So if you find that the team is falling apart, you let the CEO have to make decisions. Okay, what am I trying to get out of this exercise? If these other members aren't cooperating or meeting or doing what they need to do, I will still proceed forward because they're not going to take what I'm trying to learn. So whether they name is on it or not, that's still your product, and you still trying to get to the goal of the 3-hour coaching service. Managing people. It's just a lot of work. It's a hard work, but and that's why I'm so glad. Y'all think I'm not making this stuff up, but to have people come in that I haven't met validate everything that I'm teaching y'all from the inside. It does work. So, if any of the teams are having problems coming up with their deliverables, and the reason I put it in that language because I wanted you to get used to the government's language. The government is about deliverables. That's how you get paid. So in that Excel spreadsheet, which is in your profile, if you go to the resources, you're going to find all the information that we discussed. Then you could probably put a like. All the information that we discussed located in those folders. So week 1, it has all the supporting documentation along with the webinar, the PowerPoint, the sample non-disclosure agreement, the sample teaming agreement, all those things that we talked about. The small business size table, the NAICS codes, the descriptions. Start getting familiar with it. Week 2, which was last week, this is actually the PowerPoint where I talked about the different players and the steps that we talked. What is the source of salt numbers? See, y'all been eating my little log here. Y'all can know all this stuff is in there. I got a lot of good stuff in there, don't you? And since we are beta, I also need you all's feedback to make sure, you know, that if you're having challenges logging in, let us know. But I found this to be very user-friendly, and I'm loving it. And what we're going to do eventually, that's what we're working with the developer. Instead of, you know, when I'm telling you all to go out to FBO Delhi Instead of you having to go out to that, we're gonna populate these folders with these opportunities. So you don't have to even go and look at FBO Daily. It'll be right here in your profile. We're still working with the developer to get, he's trying to find the key how he's able to pull from FBO to dump this in here. Because if you look at FBODaily.com, that's a .com, that's a business to business. So we're getting ready to be FBO Daily on our own side. So instead of businesses going out there, they're going to be able to come right here to your profile based on your next code. That makes sense?
Yes.
Makes sense to me. Okay. Anyone have any questions, concerns? Yes.
What did he ask for to get into the portal?
You have to take the readiness test, the readiness assessment test. And if try to score between 18 and 34 to be able to get at this level. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Paula, I actually did log in for 3 minutes and then it kicked me out. And I've been trying and I'm not able to get it.
We'll work with you, because I got the keys to it, because I deleted it, because they're not gonna allow duplicates in there. So if you keep putting in the same answer, it's gonna kick you back out, but I'm not sure what's going on with you personally, I'll work with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Is there a certain time frame for us to go in and do our readiness assessment? Because I didn't realize that we should do it again coming into this level.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so do it again.
You
coming
can
into
go
this
ahead and
level.
do it now.
Okay.
And in here also is the deliverables. All of that is posted based on what you're required to get from individually. By the individual, and then what's required by the team. And I've also included the websites where you can find information.
And
So-
where's that at?
Huh?
In the back office, where is that sheet right there?
It's the deliverables, it's under the e-resources folder. Mhm.
And one more, I can get it on my phone, but I can't get it on my computer, is
I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's an IT Michael question.
that? Okay.
But everything, I'm posting everything here. So today, today's topics, we were going to cover understanding the FAR, the Federal Acquisitions Regulations, the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations. Forgot what else I had. But I wanted you all to get she's right. The FAR is what drives all of these contracts. It stands for the Federal Acquisitions Regulations. Just what it means, Federal Acquisitions Regulations. So, where I want to start actually is on this website. Because everything, and I'm going to backtrack from the FAR. Let's start with the Congressional Small Business Committee. I've provided you a list of the individuals who are part of that committee, that Corey Booker, and understand how this affects you. Anytime a bill is presented to Congress, you can go to this website and actually track the progression of it. We don't even, so you can see, these are all the members. How this bill eventually is going to affect you. Nobody tells us, I remember that conjunction guy, conjunction, and somebody bill, but you really didn't connect what it really meant. Well, if you look here, it's going to tell you, all right, this is where this bill is in the process. This is the text. This is as it relates to the Small Business Committee. So begin to understand and follow this, because this is truly affecting our day-to-day lives. And if we don't know what's even beginning in the process, we can't even have a say in it because it's already passed. And hold it accountable. In our community, we'll sit back and fuss. The non-minority community, they will start writing, they will start calling, they're holding them accountable. We've got to shift the way we think and do this, because again, this is our dollars that are being spent. Make sense?
Yes.
One question on that, I noticed when I looked it up for our homework assignment, am I missing it, or maybe I went to the wrong one, I didn't see one for Georgia.
This is for the Congress. It's not specifically, you're not gonna have a small business committee for the state. This is all congressional. This is where the law is actually starting to pass. It trickles down from the federal to the state. Okay? So, start understanding what this is and know who these players are, because you may need to be writing them someday, right?
Right.
Okay. The other website I always like to go is, again, Follow the Money. You go to the White House website, OMB budget. Oftentimes we hear them talk about the budget and don't really have a clue how that's impacting us. Every year, the budget is posted on this website. And it's posted by agency. So once you determine which agency is buying your services, you can go to that agency's fact sheet to see what they were actually proposing in their budget for this fiscal year. So every agency will have their information. So you go in and look at their fact sheet and see where your business fit in that agency, once you've identified those top 5 agencies. Am I making sense?
Yes.
What, and when our community try to say our president hasn't done anything, I'm gonna totally disagree with you. Because right here, I love how he's broke, I've never seen this like this before, where he actually break it down by his key issues. And if you go here and say you're supporting African American families, it's 24 pages, and he's telling you what they're including in their budget. Expanding access to high early childhood education. So any of the teachers, look at it and start following the money. It says, includes $200 million in discretionary funding above the 2016. But it's going to go to the states. So to me, it's all about following the money. We need to know where all the money is being dispersed once it goes to Congress. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think with the new president coming in, a lot of...
Lord help us, we just have to pray. We need a lot of praying, we need some praying soldiers, Lord. But right now, once this budget is passed, it's passed. They're going to probably try to block everything that he's even implementing. Yes, ma'am.
On the serious note, when you said pray, is there specific things that we need to pray for?
We need to pray that we have a president that's going to have a heart of the people, like the people that we have right now.
So just, I want to be sure because, we need to be specific.
Yes, ma'am.
Heart of the people.
Heart of the people. So it's telling you everything, how your tax dollar is being spent. I'm like, follow the money. 907 million in individuals with disability education. So oftentimes they will tell you the agencies that's gonna be responsible for, dispersing and managing the money as it relates to their neighborhood. So when I look at 128 million for promised neighborhoods, what agency would you think was managing that? See, yeah. So you see where the money is flowing. Over here, they're talking about HBCUs. Training workers, any of the teachers, training. Anytime there's training, you know, that's right here. Department of Labor, they're getting he's asking for $138 million increase from last year.
I'm familiar with that. We owe.
Yes. Working for, but for middle class jobs. So y'all get the just of this?
So Ms. Holly, just to make sure I understand, this budget is voted in March, or it's already?
They'll start the budget process. Again, when does the government's fiscal year end? So they'll start fighting between now and then. And it probably won't get passed until after the election year. That's why it's really important that we do get out and vote. Because I think they have 24 Republicans that are up for a seat in the Congress. And again, once you understand how that machine works, it makes sense. I didn't understand it, you know, they just vote, they just fight, and why is that impacting my life? But it does impact my life. And how the government is structured, and it makes sense. One can't do anything without the other. And then you have the president. So the president can veto, but it also has to go back through Congress and the House, so it makes sense. So no one entity really truly have the power. So that's another exercise for homework, okay? All right. Now, the FAR. The FAR stands for Federal Acquisitions Regulation. It is the principal set of rules for managing all acquisitions. It makes sense to me. You have to have a law that tells everybody how the rules are played. That's why I like playing in the federal rather than state and local. A lot of times, state and local, it's a lot of politics. Where on the federal level, it has to be a system across the board. And I say, go start at the federal, but we don't want to not participate in the state and the local. That's still money, but at least make enough money on the federal side. Now we can go and play on the state and local side. That makes sense?
Right.
So, when you're looking at the FAR, the process consists of 3 phases. It's the recognition and acquisition planning. So what will happen is every year they have an actual acquisition team that's going to look at that agency's budget and determine how they're going to issue based on what was in the budget, how they're going to implement those contracts. So that's what contract formation is. They need to now formate the contract and put it in a RFQ, RFP, however they're determined based on their planning, that particular contract should be issued. Am I losing y'all? Y'all good?
No.
What will happen is, once the budget's approved, they got to do an acquisition plan. And in that acquisition plan becomes the contract formation, which means they're going to turn it into a RFQ, RF, or request for proposal, and, or simplified acquisition. Okay? And then once they're done and it's awarded, it becomes the contract administration. And someone on the other side still have to manage that contract once it's awarded. When you look at the FAR, I like to look at the FAR as an encyclopedia. And every agency has a component of the FAR. But it's going to tell you step by step how that agency has to process the contracts. Let me go to yes.
So in other words, you're saying the federal government is more systematic, and it's just pretty much like a protocol thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
It makes sense. If you think of the government, and that's why I say even me, when I was thinking of designing this business model, I wanted to think, well, how does the government do it? And what I immediately thought was the military. When they have to train people in 3 months' time to go out there and fight a war. It's an effective, systematic process that has worked. And when you look at the government, it makes sense. Everything has to be uniform across the board. They can't have one agency doing this way. It has to be a systematic process. Make sense?
Yes.
So you're saying the government really has more money than the church does?
Oh, absolutely. No, I didn't think absolutely. I didn't think
I mean, but when you break it down, God is order, and God is very strategic. That's why the word says, I know the plans that I have for you, the plans to prosper you. So we have a strategic God, and I think that's what people miss in the church. They don't realize that being apostolic is being strategic.
Right. Thank you. So when you look at the FAR, there are 53 parts. And it's going to tell you, and if you print it out, it's almost 2,000 pages. So this is the Bible as it relates to federal contracts. So when you're looking at source of sought notices and when you're looking at RFP, you're always going to see some reference to a FAR clause. Just think of this as the law. So you'll see FAR 19, if you're talking about SBA programs. SBA programs are all located under FAR 19. Small business programs, right? Anything as it relates to what SBA does is located in here. So that's where it starts. But what happens, once it's placed into the FAR, and this FAR has always been updated, they have a committee that's constantly looking at these regulations based on laws and new laws and updating this information. So once it's posted here, then each agency will have their own, what they call Code of Federal Regulations. So it's called the electronic, I always call it Electronic Code of Federal Regulations. The ECFR. This is what dictates, this actually supersedes the FAR, because this is each agency's own personal law as it relates to the FAR, but they have their own rules and regulations. So when I go down to the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations and go to Title 13, Business and Credit Assistance, you're going to see all the agencies that fall under this particular title. So here is the Small Business Administration. And here, it tells everything that anything that SBA does as it relates to an agency. What's their process? So, if small business know how they look at small business size. If I look at the 8A program or the Hub Zone program or the Women program, it's going to tell me exactly what to expect from that agency. So it tells you what the purpose of the program is, what length of time, who is socially or economically disadvantaged, what's the potential for success. Just because you have a business does not necessarily mean that you can get into the program. So these are the things that they're going to look at to determine whether or not you have the potential for success to participate in this program, because this program is a business development program. Correct? So get familiar with it so that you can understand what the rules are. But I'm gonna take you even a little further. When I started my business, I had no understanding about SOPs. Anybody know what SOPs are? No, y'all know what as a small business, and the small businesses that I was working for, none of them ever had SOPs. You just start your work and you just do your work. And I wasn't exposed to SOPs until I got to the government and to do my job. And I didn't know what that meant. But my supervisor kept saying, go to SOPs. And it made sense. They have to be uniform across the board. But everyone that was in my position needed to follow the same procedures. There were 600 people that had my position across 64 district offices. So there was an SOP that told you step by step on what to do. Guess what? Y'all gonna run me. Y'all gonna really love me. On this website here is SBA's SOP as it relates to the 8A program. So when you look at the SOP, it's going to tell you how they're going to evaluate everything. Hello? This is still, I'm surprised that they have it out there, but that's why I say it's easy for y'all. Y'all got Google. I didn't have Google. But if you go to the SOP, they're going to tell you preparing the app. How does the district office respond to an individual who requests information? Step up to that level of details. How do they screen? How many days? What's on everything that you need? Y'all get this?
Yeah.
Can I get a hallelujah? I was trying to, it's not allowing me to save it, but I'm gonna work with it and see how I can save it. But you're gonna have the video this week, so you can Google it.
But if you're going, you can download it.
Yeah.
You can download it and save it. I was trying it last night and trying to upload it with something going on the back end that I wasn't quite sure. I had to give it to the developer. But again, once you get into the program, now this is where I started. Now, what they're telling you here is what happens before the program, what they're going to look for, right? And then here, if they decline you, you have an appeal process. what's going to occur with that appeal. Now it tells me, this is where my job when I was in SBA began. What happens once they're in the program? What was my responsibility in servicing that 8A? So it's going to tell you everything that they're going to request once you are approved into the program. It tells you, most people, and that's what I go into a little deeper, because people don't even understand what's the role of that specialist. Once you get into the program, they have what they call a requirements letter, a search letter. The requirements letter, those source of salt notices that I'm having you all to respond to, again, that's the first stage of the procurement process for the government determining their market research. But once you're in the program, understanding that that's the government's market research component, you can, and you respond to that source of salt notice, you can have a request to your specialist to do what they call a requirements letter, requesting that that agency set that particular notice aside for you as an 8A sole source contract. Now that gives you a little bit more leverage than everybody else replying to that notice. And the agencies are going to be more apt to respond to a .gov to .gov email as opposed to a .com, .gov email. So this is telling you how to leverage and understand the rules. What it is, what's the everything you need to know is right here. Okay? So those are, this is in your folder. I did give you the different websites. That'll be in the folder, what we just covered. I did want to briefly, I want to also allow you all time enough to meet together collectively at the end of the class. And I wanted to go over the source of salt and how you should be looking at evaluating the source of salt notice. Putting the source of salt notice. There is a template in your profile sheet of responding to a source of salt notice. And if any of the teams you find yourself being challenged and stuck, I am willing to do during the week a join me webinar with the teams. Just need to email me and request it. So if I go, again, this is my favorite shopping store. It's broken down by year, by month. I can go out and see what's out. So you can see the total activity that's really going on. So there's a total of 111 notices out today and 469 solicitations. There's been modifications to potentially those solicitations. And then there's also documents that might be associated with that solicitation. Then they're also going to post the number of awards that have been posted for that day and any other special notice. So I'm going to go back to this again to make sure that we're all clear on what we should be looking at when you're trying to put your package together. So again, what I do this is broken down by after services. And the reason I like this again better than FPO.gov, because FPO.gov can be very overwhelming. And they'll send you everything and not anything that you want. This way is broken down in the government's process. So if I'm just looking for what source of salt notices are out for the day. What is source of salt? Somebody want to tell me what a source of salt notice is again? Somebody tell me what a source of salt notice is? One person. Raise your hand. Be brave. Yes, ma'am.
Sounds like they're seeking like resources for the jobs that are available.
Yes.
Is it non-competitive, 150
The
below?
source of salt notices is the first step of the government trying to determine who is out there. That's what it means, source of salt. That's their market research. And based on who responds to these notices, helps them to determine which program they're going to put it in. If they have enough small businesses, maybe they'll just make it a small business set aside. If they have enough women who's responded to that notice, they perhaps will set it aside in the women's program. If they have 8A, they might set it aside as the 8A. Yes, ma'am.
What are the numbers in parentheses? What does that represent?
This is the numbers that are out for that particular industry for today. And I'm gonna go in there shortly. Yes, ma'am.
So, the source of salt, so if everyone in here that's a woman applies with their business for a particular, inquiry, then they say, okay, mostly minority women, will throw it in that group.
We're gonna throw, yes.
Agency.
We're gonna throw it, we're gonna set it aside for the women's program. We've got 20 women, we had 3 service disabled veterans respond. But since we have 20 women, we're gonna make this particular contract as part of the women's program.
And that's the, 5209 is that's administration.
Oh, I'm not sure what that
Okay.
is. Yes, ma'am.
So the solicitations are the people responding?
The source of salt notice, this is us responding to the government and saying, yeah, we out here, we can do this.
And then, so this is almost like a supply and demand type if they put out a certain source.
Every day, they're gonna put out these notices. They're
Okay.
trying to, because again, they're getting ready to get into their time of trying to get rid of the money.
Okay.
So they have to determine what businesses are out there and what program to put it in before they can turn it into an actual solicitation.
Okay.
This is not a solicitation stage.
Okay.
Y'all get
I
that?
think I misunderstood what solicitation. Okay.
This is just strictly market research who's out there.
Okay.
So I always like to just look, because again, when you look at the pool of people in here, that's how you start collaborating. So I always start in this particular category because that's a soft area. A lot of times they just throw a lot of contracts that's not necessarily associated with any of those industries. So when I look out here, I tend to look at support. When they say support services, that means to me they may need some administrative, but maybe not. So I will go in and give some of things like yesterday. I think it was on the 23rd. I was looking. They had a contract out for proofreading and editing. It was a 5-year contract. It was an RFP. Okay, so the source of salt again was the first stage. Who's out there? Then it turns into a pre-solicitation. we'll get ready to give you a heads up, it's coming out. And then once it comes out, it turns into a combined synopsis and solicitation. I'm gonna go back, but I'm gonna show you all that. I'm just gonna search it. But I wanted to go into a little bit more details with the source of salt notices. So when I'm looking at the source of salt notice, let's look at education and training. Basic and advanced well-being. So understand that this is what's the first thing that you see? The next code is going to tell you the contracting office. The contracting office may not necessarily be the same, in the same place where the place of performance is. It's going to give you a number, so you're always going to be referencing that as part of your response under solicitation. It's going to show you the contact person. Now, if you go back to that sheet that I had up, where I had past, present, and future, what I tell people as part of the strategy, every source of salt notice is going to have a person name, which is the contracting specialist, and a phone number. Once you respond to these notices, you're going to follow up every 2 weeks. Then that squeaky wheel that she said. Can you tell me the status of where you are in the procurement process of this? Oh, by the way, can I send you my capability statement that also outlines other areas of expertise? Oh, Ms. Smith, can you tell me who handles SAPs, or Simplified Acquisitions, in your division? And how do I get in contact with them? Because it still boils down to relationships.
So, in this phase, is there the RFI that comes into play in this phase?
That's still part of it. They just still fishing, requesting for information. Requesting for information, sometimes the government don't know what the solution is. So they're asking you for the information. Tell us how to do it. Because we don't know.
And would you respond in with that type of format? Here's my RFI.
Yes. Based on, you're gonna, and the good thing about, again, they're gonna tell you, that's why I can respond to any proposals. That's the format is the same. It's the same. That's why I like, to me, it's easier, marketing to the government than not, because everything is public and it's a process. And I can follow the contracts. Where in commercial, you have no idea who you're chasing. Okay, this was what came out on there was a pre-solicitation. You see the NAICS code? Now, would you have thought this would have fallen under that NAICS code? See? Proofreading and editing solicitation. Vivian Malta is the contact. It's a competitive 8A. That's why I say even now, you don't have to be 8A to play. Why? And how do you play?
So it's a subcontractor with an 8A firm.
How?
You play as a subcontractor with an 8A firm. Partner
You
with
can
an 8A.
partner with the 8A. So again, if I'm at the stage that you are, not even 8A, I would make sure that I had an 8A firm that was in my back pocket as I'm looking at opportunities. I would have a hub zone. I would have a service disabled veteran on. So as these contracts come out, then I'm able to pull on my resources.
When it says competitive 8A,
When you're in the 8A, there's 2 thresholds. It's a business development program. Anything below $4 million can be sole source, no competition. Anything above $4 million have to be competed among the participants in the 8-to-8 program. And once that contract is in the 8-to-8 program, it has to stay in there. It really does take an act of Congress for them to take those contracts out of the program. So when I look at this, they're telling you right here, no proposals are being accepted. And, but I always go to FBO.gov because that is the official website. You get the information. And then you can download the solicitation. And every RFQ or FP is going to be formatted the same way. It's going to tell you the date it was issued, when it was due. Was it an 8A? Was it a small business? All of that will fall in it. So to me, I see a problem with this first sheet, which means I'm going to go back to the federal government and ask them a question, because when you're bidding, everybody can respond and ask questions. Does anyone see a problem in box 10? Box 10.
It's an 8A set aside.
Who said it? Who said something?
Sorry.
What you said?
It's an 8A set aside.
The next code.
That too.
It was different what was up front. So which next code is it? Yeah? So that would be a question. It's an RFQ. What does the RFQ mean? Huh? And what types of contracts are usually those? Simplified acquisitions, anything $150,000 or below are usually RFQs. They just want quotes. Yes, ma'am.
But you did get that screen. Which, can you back out or something? Back.
Over here, when I went to the official
Okay.
FBO.gov website.
All right.